reconstructed after World War II, and a series of laws and legislative acts finally eliminate slavery and various types of enslavement in the early 20th century, and of course independence in 1961. If we turn to oral traditions, this is a very important source of information in reconstructing the past. And some of the speakers that we'll have today have drawn on oral traditions in trying to reconstruct the Sierra Leonean past. And so there is important information in these oral traditions. I'm not talking about oral histories. I'm talking about information passed down from generation to generation. While there is information in these oral traditions, they're very difficult to interpret. They're very difficult to anchor chronologically, and many only extend back to the late 18th or 19th centuries and reflect the disruptive impacts of the Atlantic slave trade. There was a great deal of disruption in many of these communities, and so when we look at these oral traditions, often they provide very limited information. So when we look at history books, when we look at what has been said about the Sierra Leone past, we have very fragmentary or incomplete views. And I don't expect you to read this, but I think it's a great quote. This is from a book by Oliver Davies, who wrote one of the major surveys of the pre-Atlantic history of West Africa. And he writes, with regard to Sierra Leone, that this area was the barbarian fringe beyond the ken of the civilization of the Middle Niger and beyond the gold fields. These are the states of ancient Ghana and Mali that I mentioned. Groups of people lost in the Guinea forest must have made pottery, of which we have a few collections, probably smelted a little iron, and indulged in pagan rites, of which occasional stone circles and monoliths preserve the memory. This is sort of he's sort of really just making up something about a place that he really doesn't have any information about. And this is often what we see in terms of the presentation of Sierra Leone's deeper past. For example, some writers really actually only begin Sierra Leone's history with the beginning of the Atlantic trade, with the arrival of the Europeans. Hence, we can look at David Siddall's work, as well as some other writers who see Sierra Leone, as well as other parts of the West African forest, as really being occupied by hunter-gatherers, fairly